what did I get myself into, and can I do this? I've also heard things like, I'm a fraud. So you might have said some of those things to yourself already. And just know that it's absolutely normal, and that it takes time, and a lot of people walking beside you and helping you through. So today is just the beginning of that, and it's really looking at the transition to your new role, and knowing that successful managers are open to change. They're absolutely obsessed with learning, and so congratulations again for being here and being open to developing a new set of skill sets perhaps, and building on the ones that you already have. So today you're going to learn how to succeed in your role as you transition from peer to supervisor or manager, and we've got lots of tips and strategies and best practices from other leaders in and outside of your industry also. My background has been working with organizations for the last 15 years, really helping them build their customer experience. I'm an executive coach, helping leaders be successful in their own roles, managers, frontline staff, again, to make sure that your skills are at the level that you can be impactful in the roles that you do. And also been working with Orca for a number of years as a coach, trainer, and speaker. So I'm really excited to spend this time with you. Whoops, we're just going to change the slide here for a moment. You have a bunch of handouts, and you probably see no pictures on them, so I apologize for the look, but it gives you an opportunity to see and to be able to take some notes as we go along. So just the agenda, what we're going to start out with in the next hour is talk about those characteristics of being a great leader. And a lot of these are skills and characteristics that you already bring in, but there's also things to be aware of that as you look at this, and a self-assessment to say, what can I improve on, what can I work on? And then really knowing that the transition to peer to leader, as I said, it can be a challenging time, but understand that there's a lot of benefits to that also, along with the challenges, and then some pitfalls that others, managers, have identified, and some ways around that also. And then we'll take a time to look at the steps that you can take to be more confident in your role, along with some tips and strategies and best practices. I might mention a few things along the way that you say, hey, Lori, can you send me more information on that? And I'd be happy to do that. The last page of your handout has my contact information. I love to hear stories. I love to hear success stories to share with others. Anything else that's missing that perhaps in the future that we can add to and support you in this new role. So please feel free to take notes. I'd like you to turn in your handouts and think about for a moment the best manager that you've ever had. And then jot down some things about what made them a great leader, ways that they inspired you or challenged you. And also in the chat room, there's an opportunity for you to type any of those in. We'd love to hear from you and the rest of you, if you can keep an eye on that chat room, because your ideas, again, are going to be so helpful and encouraging to others also going through this. So take a moment, best manager you've ever had, what made them a great leader, how did they inspire you, and how did they challenge you? Do we have, Terry, some chatting going on? Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. So we'll let you think about that, and then I'm going to move on, and I'm going to share with you a few things from following leaders that have been helpful. So skills and also attributes and characteristics of great leaders. And one of the first things on the list, as you're going through, I'd like you to think about these, and the list that you've also provided, you can add to this. And if you, as a self-assessment, if you're saying, yeah, you know what, I've got that, make a check mark there. And if you're thinking, you know what, I know about this, but maybe I need to focus on it a bit more, kind of put an arrow there. And in the end, I'd like you to really think about 3 to 5 areas that, if you really focused on, would make a big difference in your performance. And then you're going to prioritize these and really focus on one at a time. So for example, if you think about caring and you say, you know what, I'm a caring person, and you want to put a check mark there, just before you do, I want you to really take that a little bit deeper, because there is a term that I always use. We want results, and I think with results, First of all, we can have the knowledge, but it's knowledge plus actions that equal results. So you can know and have an idea of what caring is, but I want you to take it one step further and think, okay, how do I demonstrate that I care? How do I demonstrate that my leadership comes from the heart? And if you have been able to demonstrate it through your actions, then absolutely put a check mark. But if it's something, again, that you need to focus on, identify that so later when you can come back, you can write some goals. So let's start out with caring. Your team members that are reporting to you are your most important asset in the organization. They are the ones that you're going to rely on for getting the work done. And it's really about taking care of them. The work that you do really does come from the heart. I was driving in Hamilton the other day, and I saw, as I was going through Steeltown on Burlington Street, I saw a big logo over top of the highway, and it said, "Our product is steel, our strength is people." And isn't that so true? In the work that you do, it's all about the people and caring for each other. I just want to share with you, one of my passions is learning from leaders and great leaders and finding out what they do different. And although I know we're talking about retirement homes today, you can learn from leaders across the board because your characteristics and your skills are transferable. This one leader, her name is Principal Wayman, and if you go on, you'll see a wonderful YouTube video about her and how she's made a difference in the school system and how she's increased productivity. And her logo is, "I've learned to forge ahead through fear. Love really makes a difference. Every situation better." And one thing that you'll hear from Linda is she'll say, if you're going to lead, lead. You've all been chosen to be leaders in your organization. And what does that mean? That means that your job is to lead people, lead them through change, lead them through your vision and what's, again, important in the organization. And she also says, so what, now what? And I don't know if you've ever thought about that in an organization. Sometimes, you'll hear complaining, or you might walk down the hallway and say, well, this isn't right, or that isn't right, and this is a barrier, and that's a barrier. And what she says is, okay, so what? Now, what are we going to do about that? And as a leader that's really looking at being solution-focused, recognizing, yes, there are barriers, but now what are we going to do about it? And then she says, every single day on the loudspeaker, if no one told you today they loved you, if no one told you they loved you today, remember I do. And if you think about leadership, and if you think about the roles that you have, caring, coming from the heart, you might be able to demonstrate this, but what would happen if you told people how much you really cared about them? And she does that every single day. And so another great example is a gentleman named Captain William Swenson. And if you go and you look, you Google him, you'll see, I think it's CBC has a interview with him, but some live footage of what happened during a huge, horrific battle that Captain William Swenson was in. I mean, this man is strong. He has courage. He has strategic direction. And you see him going into this battlefield, pulling out the fallen soldiers, and he'll bring them into the airplane where a paramedic has got a camera on his hat. And you'll see Captain William Swenson bend down and kiss his soldier. And in his interview, they asked him about that. They said, you're a warrior. You have hard decisions to make every day. Yet here you are. You bend down and you kiss your fallen soldier. And he talked about how he wanted the soldier to know how much he cared about him and that it was okay and that he was going to be okay. Leadership is really starting with people and showing that you care. And it comes from the heart. So I've got a couple questions for you. Do you care about your team? Do you really, really care? Do you know, and you think about them being your greatest assets, do you care about them and take care of them? And what are you doing to build a culture of safety and trust? Because this culture is the basis of everything you do. I mean, in an organization, you're looking certainly at productivity and results, but it takes a team to do that. And in order to get that, it starts with safety and trust. So how are you creating that? And then my next question is, what's your thank you volume? You know, as a leader sometimes, I don't know about you, but I've got this eagle eye, and sometimes we go into a situation where we're looking around about what's happening, and sometimes my eye goes to what's not right. And that's where I concentrate on. And that's human nature. But sometimes as a leader, it's stepping back and saying, what is right? And how much are you thanking your team for that? So have that eagle eye around all of the great things your team is doing, and how can you increase that thank you barometer. So caring is number one. Leadership starts with the heart. And then it comes to passion. How passionate about being a leader are you? And can your team see your passion? Passion is energy. And what do you love about your job? What excites you? And like any fire, it can go out. So how do you keep that passion going? And, you know, I call them firefighters and fire lighters, people that light your fire and people that put your fire out. And it's important to be aware of that so that you can keep that fire going. And the other thing in a leader that I think we also have a responsibility to be aware of is that we can put people's fires out and we can also light them. And I know in my career, I have done both. Unfortunately, I hate to admit that, but I've made a goal of making sure that I light people's fires. I make sure that people are passionate and love what they do. And that's a personal goal of mine. So what can you do to light your team members' fires? How can you connect with them and get them excited every day about the work they do? And then it really comes down to your attitude. Are you an enthusiastic optimist, or are you the one, again, with that eagle eye that looks at everything that's not going right? Your attitude really counts, and it rubs off on everyone else in the workplace. And when you have a positive attitude or a negative attitude, also recognize that it does something in your body. It changes your chemicals in your brain. So, for example, if you walk around and things aren't very positive, you actually, believe it or not, are not as good at solving problems. Or it might even affect your innovation, your creativity. When I'm negative, I'm not a good listener, and perhaps it might even affect relationships. So take a look at your own attitude and find some ways to bring it back into the positives. And one benefit here, just so you do know, is there's research around optimism, and optimists actually live 7 to 9 years longer. It's much healthier and a much happier place to be when you're in a good frame of mind and a good attitude. You'll also read some information from Daniel Goleman. I'll talk about emotional intelligence, but one of the things that he said is there's research that shows your team members actually know what kind of mood you are in, even if you're not in the same room as them. I mean, that's pretty powerful. So when you come into work, are you in a good mood? Because everybody feels that. Or are you bringing sort of some things home with, or things into work, or stressful situations that impact your mood? So do a mood alert and check that and work on that, because your attitude rubs off to everyone else and will have an impact on your residents and the service that you provide. You know, I have a great picture that I went in and I found, and I look at this gentleman and I think, what, and doesn't he make you smile just looking at him? What an amazing attitude. And I think this is also a really good demonstration of vision. As a leader, what do you visualize? Your organization will have a mission and a vision statement, and it's your role to get your whole team on board to make sure that you achieve it. And I don't know about you, but if my mom and dad are in a retirement home, I want them looking like this. I want them happy and singing. And if that's my vision and I'm able to articulate it and get everyone on board, all of our actions are going to drive that. So be willing to have a strong vision of what you want to see, even with your own team members, and be able to articulate that. Are you confident? Are you confident in your role? And that's going to take time, but are you confident in knowing that you're going to learn it? Are you confident when you walk into a situation with your body language and the way that you talk? Leaders are confident. And then courageous. I think this is a big one for me when I think about leaders, because this is Being courageous even when you have to have tough conversations. Being courageous when you deal with conflict. I don't know about you, but that's something that I don't like too much. But it's being courageous to have those difficult conversations, because when you do, you change your whole entire environment and culture. It's being courageous to have a learner's mindset, to be humble, to say, hey, you know what, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It's being courageous to let go of the ego, and even to get feedback. You know, I know we're all learning, and as a learner, sometimes we make mistakes. Get some feedback. Learn how to take that to the next level. Learn what you're doing right. Be a courageous leader that can make those great, tough choices. Great leaders have integrity. And when you think of integrity, it's doing the right thing, even when you know no one's looking. And somebody with strong integrity has strong character. You know your values, you know what's important to you, and you're following them. And so your thinking, your actions, the words that come out of your mouth, they're all congruent. And integrity, again, is a key aspect of a great leader. Do you have high standards? Have you set them? People will rise to the standards that you set. So do you expect the best from your team members, because that's where they're going to go? And do they know what your standards are? Have you taken the time to really let them know about what they are, and then why they're important, and what the benefits are of those high standards? So standards, again, are really important, and you know, there's an interesting study that was done. This was with school teachers, and I think it applies to all of us across the board. There was a number of students, large number of students, all mixed up. Below average, average, above average performers, and they mixed them up and they put them into 3 classrooms. Classroom 1, they told the teacher that they had all the low performers. Classroom 2, all the average performers. Classroom 3, the above average performers. At the end of the year, I mean, you can guess what the results were, exactly that. Classroom 1, below. Classroom 2, average. Classroom 3, above average. So what you expect is important. Your standards are important. Do you believe in your team, and do you expect the best? And then great leaders are great listeners. And you know, when I think about this, I think about the amount of change that you're going through, the number of emails that you have, and sometimes I know in my own role, I'm listening for what I want to hear. Do you take the time to really listen to what's important with your team members? Do you put down your cell phone? Do you carve out the time to really listen, to understand? And then, are you a great coach? And this is a tough one. Some of you might bring in great coaching experience from, you know, whether your past performance or outside of the workplace, and those are amazing skills. Coaching is being curious, and coaching is asking questions. A lot of times we think coaching is telling. People don't necessarily learn that way. So coaching could be teaching a brand new skill. It could be improving performance. Coaching could also be when something isn't going right, how do we get people back on track? And it's about starting with that caring heart conversation. And then rewards and recognition. This is a key area. We know that employees, the number one thing that employees say is a full appreciation of a job well done. And I've had some leaders say, really, do I need to, you know, say thank you just because you're coming in and doing your job? Well, that is a motivator for our employees, is recognizing that hard work. And can you imagine what it feels like if you send off a really specific email, a thank you for a job well done, and that email is CC'd to, you know, your CEO or your executive director, how important that employee feels. And again, it's about being a great leader and appreciating the work that your employees do. Are you supportive? Are you the kind of leader that when your team member comes to you and says, you know, I need Saturday off, and you're thinking, oh, what can I do to make sure they get Saturday off? Or are you the one that says, you know what, you can't have Saturday off? Are you that supportive leader that goes above and beyond to make sure that your greatest assets are taken care of always? Because that's how you build loyalty, and that's how you get that support back. Are you competent? Are you the leader that continuously improves their tasks, their studies, they're getting better at the work that you do? And do you learn from all sorts of different resources and continuously improve? And then do you make good judgment? Do you look at making sure that you are and you have someone there that can support you as you make decisions? You know, there's a quote from Warren Buffett, and it says, "It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it." And if you think about that, you'll do things different. Isn't that so true? And you know, sometimes we jump into action. We might not have all the facts, and it's sometimes taking a step back, taking a deep breath, and really thinking about what our decisions are and that judgment. And I think a great coach or a great mentor really helps along the way. And then it's also about emotional intelligence. And you'll hear that buzzword. I know in the work that I've done along the way, leaders are hired in some cases because of their technical skills, and they're fired because they can't get along with people. And that's all about emotional intelligence. So if, again, you're interested, Daniel Goleman is a guru on this. And one of the things that he talks about, first of all, is knowing your own emotions. So having some self-awareness. I know for me, it's being aware of when I'm angry, when I'm upset, when I'm stressed out. And then once you have the awareness, you're able to manage your emotions. So putting some things in place so that you can regulate them, so that you don't say the wrong thing, and then again, get yourself into a situation that you can't find your way out of. Are you able to motivate yourself? Are you able to have some resiliency skills so that when times are tough, or you think that you're, maybe struggling, are you able to pull yourself out and motivate yourself and keep going as a leader? And then part of emotional intelligence is also recognizing the emotions in others. So having empathy, and empathy goes a lot deeper than just the words that you use. It's really looking from even your your toughest employees, the ones that are maybe struggling, looking at a deeper reason why and what's happening for them. And then handling those relationships, managing the emotions in others is part of being a great leader. So those are just some, again, high-level skills. I would highly recommend that you look at them, do a self-assessment, and is there an area that you can really focus on that would make a difference in your leadership? Not all 5 at once, just one at a time. And this next slide is not in your handouts, and I'd be happy to mail it to you, or email it to you if this would help. But leaders, again, going through the transition of peer to manager, it's about truly having a learner's mindset with the intention of learning in all situations. And I say all situations because sometimes, it's the tough ones that we have the biggest lessons from. And the strong leaders, the ones that are obsessive with learning, will take something and move forward and reframe the way that they look at situations. One of my mentors, his name is Tiagi, and he's an experiential trainer. And we talk about experiential learning in my world. And he said to me, "Lori, people don't learn by experience." And that just blew me away, because I said, "Tiagi, what do you mean? That's what we're teaching people." And he said, if people learned by experience, they wouldn't be divorced 3 or 4 times. I mean, think about that. And I just kind of chuckled. I went, yeah, you're right. He said, people don't learn by experience. They learn by reflecting on their experience. So this is a reflective cycle by Professor Graham Gibbs. And in my coaching work, I started doing this, and I encourage my executives to do this, managers, supervisors. This is a great learning tool. And it doesn't have to be too time-giving. You can, do these in point forms. But we might go through something, and we can certainly think about it, but when we actually write it down and we actually do a little more thinking, it goes into the permanent part of our brains, and it will come up when you need it most. So identify an incident that happened, and then write down, what were you thinking and feeling as a result? And again, this is a great emotional intelligence tool. What was good and what was bad about the experience? A lot of times we just focus in on the negative, but my gosh, there's some really good learning that we can get out that's also positive. And what sense can you make out of the situation? And then what would you do differently? And what else could you do? And I like the way that those 2 questions are posed, because they actually get you thinking in different parts of your brain. What would you do differently? but what else could you do? And that what else could you do is forward thinking and helps you, again, tap into different parts of your experience or your past or your knowledge that you can pull on later. And then the last part is an action plan. So if this was if this happened again, what would you do? Now, this is a discipline that you can put into your practice every day, and you can track this, and it'll be amazing as you learn, again, having that learner's mindset. So now you're in the role, and you've focused on your leadership skills, qualities, characteristics, but now you've got that transition, and you're transitioning from peer to leader. And I think what's really important is sometimes we jump to the challenges, but really look at the benefits of this and how you can leverage these benefits. And so just quickly, I want you to think about the benefits to you. What have they been? And I mean, you're welcome to use the chat room for this, but when you think about benefits of going from peer to leader, you know how things work. You've been on the front line. You know and have identified some things that maybe need some changes, or where you want to spend some time thinking about how you can get them to work a little bit better. You might also know the players. You know what motivates people. You know what stresses people out. You might know some of the barriers that are happening. An important one to recognize is that you've been chosen for this position. You went through the interview process. You have a management team that really believes in you and has faith in your ability to lead. You may have resources. Maybe you know how to do some of the tasks anyway, and that's, again, very helpful. You might have some ideas around the politics. And another key thing here, too, is for you to think about who can you trust that's going to give you feedback. And who's going to pull you aside when, you know what, you're not on the right track? Who's going to give you that awesome feedback? And there might be a lot of other benefits that you've identified. If you're a manager coming in from another organization, I mean, a huge benefit is this is a fresh start, blank page, and you get to bring all the new ideas in that you know worked someplace else. But along with the benefits, and some of you are thinking, okay, I've got this, but there's a lot of challenges. And you might have some of these challenges, and there might be some questions after that come up in the chat room about this. But when you come up with a challenge, write it down, and then start thinking, what are some ways to handle that challenge? And, you know, we can have this conversation today, depending on how the time goes, but also dig into your network. So we'll talk about, you know, coaches or mentors or other peers that are going through this, but this is a great way to get some of this, this information out. So let me share with you some things that I know other leaders have gone through and some things that have helped. One big challenge has been a role change, and the fact that now you are the professional. You might have at one point, you know, had policies and procedures from your organization that you either didn't support or didn't like or didn't talk kindly about, and now you're in a position where you need to support them. And so one of the ways to handle that might be finding out why they're in place, being very, very curious. Curiosity, by the way, is one of your best friends. And when you find out why, you can also communicate that back to your team members. And don't forget that that's an important one. Whenever a new change is happening or you're communicating, talk about the whys. You might also now, a challenge might be holding people accountable or even understanding the politics. It might be confidentiality. Maybe you've had a peer and, you know, maybe you've had some conversations before around the coffee maker, and it's been gossip or it's been talk about someone else. And now that changes. Your role has changed. You are now having to speak in a positive way, or having to kind of stop those conversations, and that can be a challenge for people. Maybe you need to give up something that you really like to do. And so now it's tapping into your new job, your new passion, and giving and delegating to others so that they can enjoy what some of those favorite things were. Or maybe as a peer, you have a challenge with the relationship. Perhaps you've had someone that is a lot older, a lot more experience, and now you're managing them. And that might feel like a bit of a challenge to you. And in that case, it is recognizing that. It's recognizing, remember that you're a leader, and it's about supporting and helping other people get to what they need to do. So it's about taking the time to build relationships and encourage people and really dig into and engage them in what they're good at. There might also be a situation where you've had a peer and now you're their manager and they're having a hard time with it. Maybe they wanted the job. Maybe they are a poor performer and they're giving you a bit of a hard time, and that can be a big challenge. And I think from some of the managers that have talked about this, one huge thing to remember is it takes time. It takes time to show that you're a role model, to put the actions in place, and again, really focusing on them in the sense that your role is to make sure that they're successful. Now, some of you might have some other ideas, and again, I encourage you to speak and find a coach or a mentor that can help challenge, but these are some things that have worked. Also recognize that there are some pitfalls, and these are important ones to remember. One of the pitfalls is walking in, you were peer one day, and now all of a sudden, I'm the boss. And when you go in with the I'm the boss attitude, you really, really set yourself up for an adversarial position. People might say that they're following you, but now, you've got that ego that comes in. Pitfall is being task-driven. Certainly you have things to get done, but remember, it's about people. It's about the human aspect. And sometimes we're so focused on the task that we forget that it's humans and coworkers and people that get that task done. A pitfall might be over-supervising, the micromanager. And the opposite is the under-supervising. Oh, you know what? They know what they're doing. And remembering that it's a key balance between the two. You certainly have to make sure and build that trust and making sure the standards are there, but having that balance between the two. Overlooking problems and concerns because, you know what, maybe you don't want to deal with conflict, or maybe you don't know how to deal with the problem or concern. That's a pitfall. You'll find the way. Dealing with confidentiality, maybe with team members or residents. A pitfall is talking about people, talking about your team members, talking about another manager, and that can really set you up for disaster when the information gets back. Not communicating or holding information back, even blaming managers or having favorites. When I tapped into, and I often tap into my own network and I find out and do surveys about what has helped others, and I just want to share with you a few comments that other managers have said looking back has been really important for them. One of the managers said, make sure you have training and support when you're doing performance appraisals. That usually you're thrown into a role, and it's okay not knowing everything, and it's okay to ask questions because you're going to find the answer. It was important for a manager to know that your support network might shrink, that there's less people to sound off to, and that's why it's super important to build your network up now. Another manager said, trust your instincts. Trust them. Being a leader in any fashion requires you to work alongside your team, not above them. So when you build trust and you really build that team, it shows that everyone's equal and everyone relies on each other. Remember that you don't have to try and be everyone's friend, but it's important to connect with people because it is about people. Work to be respected and make sure that you're a great collaborator. Someone else said how important intentional first day planning was, and look to those who want to be your mentor and that want to do it for genuine support and not their own agenda. Work as an equal, not a commander. The old rule, do unto others, should always apply, and that people's poor behaviors and performance are symptoms of the lack of their basic needs are being met. So just a few ideas and a few things to be aware of as you transition in. And I really believe with that planning part, it does start with you. And so one of the best things that you can do is know your own strengths. What are you good at? So, grab a piece of paper and write down 3 or 4 things that you know you're really good at. Maybe you're a great organizer or a great planner. Maybe your strength is around people. Maybe you're a great collaborator and connector. Whatever it is, write your strengths down. Because when you have them, you can believe in yourself. And one of the things that we know is people who believe in themselves are much more likely to be successful than those that don't. And every once in a while, we all get this, those limiting beliefs that come up, that I can't do this, or I won't succeed, and they happen to all of us. When you believe in yourself, you're able to give those positive affirmations. I don't know how to be a leader, I don't know how to do a budget, but I'm going to learn. And I'm going to get better. So positive affirmations are a great thing to do. Earl Nightingale says the quote, which I really love. It says, "You become what you think about all day long." So do you think you're a leader? Do you think you're a good person? Because that's who you'll become. I have a great visualization exercise that I use, very helpful for me, and I've had others use it as well in my coaching experience. And if that's something that would interest you, please feel free to email me and I'd be happy to send that back to you. So know your strengths. And then we already talked about passion, but really dig into yours. Why are you doing what you're doing? Maybe, and be really specific. Why is it so important? Maybe one of your passions is around making sure that seniors are healthy. Maybe that they eat healthy. Maybe that they're laughing because that laughter is healthy. Maybe one of your passions is creating a really healthy work environment to help others. So what is your passion and why is it so important? And then and you can write this one down. This is a great YouTube video, and I think it's a TED Talk. It's by Simon Sinek, and it's Start With Why. And Simon really talks about connecting with the heart and how you can use that in your workplace with your team also. And then choose your attitude. Again, we talked about attitude and how important it is and how your mood really rubs off on others. There's a lot of information right now out there about an emotional contagion and how your mood can actually impact the residents, and even if you're not even present. So there's a great, again, a great book called The Happiness Advantage. Sean Anker also has a number of TED Talks, and you can check him out again on YouTube. He talks about 3 things that you can do, and number 1 is gratitude. I know for myself, sometimes when things are stressful, I'm looking at what's not right, but if you can take the time, every time you've got one of those negative thoughts, counter it with 3 things that you're grateful for. And those can be in your personal life and those can be in your work life. Sean also talks about meditation, and I think of it as prayer. It might also be kindness. One of the things that I believe is part of coming from your heart is acts of kindness. And one thing that I've learned about kindness is I believe all of you in the work that you do are kind and do kind things every day. But to take the best advantage of kindness is to do something every once in a while that you haven't done before that's a kind act. And then watch what it does to the individual and watch what it does to your heart. And that's where you're going to see some big changes in happiness. And then again, obsessive about learning and practice, and take time to plan for it. One of the books from Malcolm Gladwell is called Blink, and he, I think, talks about 10,000 hours of practice. So know that, as this transition from peer to leader, it is going to take time. And, we want to be perfect right away, but know that it's going to take learning and practice. And then we talked about caring, but it's also compassion. Compassion towards your residents, compassion towards your team members, and even to yourself. And compassion means walking with people in their walk and recognizing that everyone has different struggles, everyone. And really, as a leader, it starts with you with that compassion. I'm going to, at the end, just really briefly talk about taking care of yourself, and I've got a lot of ideas that I'd be happy to send you and share if you want to let me know that. Also set your intentions. Declare who you want to be. I'm going to share with you a little tool that I used and had a big, I think a profound impact on me. When I was doing executive coaching and going through my session, I had a little Post-it note. And what I did was I wrote down, and I encourage you to do this, write down 3 things, 3 ways you want people to describe you. So start out with I am. So for me, what was important is I'm kind, I'm wise, I'm skillful. So at the end of my session, at the end of my training, that's how I want people to describe me. And so I took this and I put it on a Post-it note and I stuck it on my computer screen so that every time I picked up the phone or every time I was doing something, those words were there to remind me and keep on track. Well, one day I got an email that came through from my daughter, and I don't know what was going on at the time, and she wrote something and I wasn't too happy about it, and I replied. And my reply, I must have not had my coffee in the morning because it was not a very kind reply. I said something like, how dare you talk to me like this? I'm your mother, I gave you birth, one of those long blah 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 ones. And I was all ready to press send. And I caught that Post-it note out of the corner of my eye, and it said kind. And all of a sudden I went, oh no. And I had to fight with myself not to send it, and I pressed delete really quickly, and I thought I need to write a different email. Now, it took me a little bit of time to get around to write the email, but I did, and I wrote a kind email, and at the end I even put love mom, and I had a hard time at that point writing love mom, but I know how much I love my daughter. And it's funny, very shortly after I got an email back from my daughter, and it was, a thank you, Mom, and I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you later. And she signed it with love also. And that was a huge reminder to me of how important it is, even in tough times, how do we want to show up? And what do you have there as a reminder to keep you on track on how you can show up? So I call it the Post-it note exercise. I believe also as a leader, it's about showing confidence. I had a nephew, his name's Dave, and he was just becoming a manager for the first time. And I said, how's it going? And, are you excited? And he said, oh my gosh, I'm scared to death. I don't know if I can do this. I feel like I'm a fraud. And I said, whoa, 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 slow down. We had a little bit of a conversation, and I said to him, my gosh, you've just been through your MBA. Of course you're smart enough. You can do this. I said, go in and fake it. And about 2 months later, I saw him and I said, how's it going? And he said, it's awesome. I said, what did you do? He said, I took your advice and I faked it. I went in strong, I had my head up, I looked my best, and I asked questions and I got to know my staff and I made decisions, and most of them were right. Sometimes I made mistakes and I fixed them, but I learned how important it is to be confident. Again, another great resource for you on YouTube. Her name is Amy Cuddy. She does a TED Talk. It is one of my favorites. I think it's had the most hits on YouTube ever. She's a behavioral scientist, and she talks about your body language and how just your body language can change your chemicals in your brain. And she calls it, I think she calls it the Superwoman stance, where you stand just with your feet apart, couple, foot apart, your hands on your hips. And if you do this every day for about 2 minutes in the washroom, not in front of your staff, of course, or at home while you're brushing your teeth, if you do this 2 minutes, you'll actually change the chemicals in your brain and you'll become confident. And the other thing that Amy says that I love, she says, fake it until you become it. So a really good, again, resource for you. It's also important to understand your roles and responsibilities, and this will also help with your confidence. Take the time to look at your organization's mission, vision, and values and what the strategic direction is. Take time to understand what your superiors' goals are and how you can support those. Find out what your roles, your responsibility, and your authority is. And then I would also encourage you to take the time to find out from your superior how you can get your questions answered, and is there an opportunity for mentoring and coaching. And those roles and responsibilities are something that you're going to want to communicate down to your team members. Make sure there's no ambiguity and that you're really clear. So as you start your role, it's also, showing your confidence. And you can do this right away with meeting with your team. Now, some of you might be in this role already and have already had that introduction, and maybe some of you haven't, and you can either do this as a whole group or one-on-one and go back. But here's a few important steps to remember. One of the first things is make it about them. So stop and think about yourself as an employee, and think about a brand new manager coming in. What would you want to know? What are your concerns? What are your questions? I think for me, because it is about them, I might be worried about, will my schedule change? Will my duties change? Will I like you? Are you going to help me? All of those things. And when you make a list, those are the things that you're going to want to talk about with your teams. Be open and clear and try to answer as much as you can. And then make it about you. What is your passions? What do you enjoy? Why is this important to you? What are your expectations and your hopes for your team? And it might be, I expect that we're going to work together as a team, and that I'm going to have a lot of questions to ask, and I'm hoping that you'll help me out. And my goal is to help you out along the way. I might be really busy and it might be tough, but that's my goal. So, let's really work towards being a great team so we can make a difference with our residents. So talk about you and your expectations and your hopes and dreams, because it's also about being authentic. One of the best things that you can also do at the beginning is be available and be visible. And that means building connections and relationships, finding out what's important to your team, and then also to show confidence is finding small, easy wins and decisions right away. These aren't big overhauls, but some easy things that you can show that you're working on things, and your goal is to work building on trust. And then, so you've got the regular meetings happening, and hopefully you're doing them, because communication is important. Keeping people in the loop. I'll often hear from organizations that that's a big challenge and a big barrier. So how are you going to do that? And maybe it's regular emails, texts, communication logs, and then go back and ask yourself, is this working? And the importance also of a positive tone. I had one manager actually that I deal with, and we do some training together, and I know she's a wonderful person, has a kind heart, but I get emails back that are very directive. There's no hello and there's no niceties at all, and she believes that, it's just about getting the job done. If your team member has to read into what your tone is, then you need to fix it. So something as simple, and it only takes a couple seconds to make sure the tone comes in that written conversation. And if there's anything at all that's controversial, or that you're not sure about, or people don't understand, then it's time for the face-to-face conversation. And it's about being transparent always, keeping people in the loop, even if you don't know what the answers are. Having meetings is a great opportunity to be able to communicate and reinforce the standards and the behaviors. So let's say, for example, you've been walking down the hallway and you see your residents happy, and you see everything is clean, and people, your team are happy and they're working together. What a great example to be able to bring that story into your meeting, to say, hey, thank you so much. I saw, this environment where everyone was helping each other, and it had a huge impact on the residents. Thank you so much. So be specific and think how you can support and reinforce your standards. One of my good friends, Barbara Glantz, who's an incredible speaker, she writes the book Care Packages from the Workplace. She says start each meeting with 2 minutes of awesomeness, and it really sets a positive environment. A talented employee may join a company because of its charismatic leaders, its generous benefits, its world-class training programs, but how long they stay and how productive is determined by their relationship with their immediate supervisor. Now, this is by Marcus Buckingham and Kurt Kaufman. I would highly recommend, don't buy the book, this is the best quote in here, but really it comes down to that relationship. In your workbook in your package here, your handouts, you're going to see the 4 F's, and these are things that you can remember and take back as a leader, and they start with being first, starting with that heart, showing that you care, being that fine role model that walks the talk, and setting the standards. And remember that you set the mood. Being a great leader also means that you need to be fair. Don't stop being friends, but the way that you talk to people might change. People want you to be authentic. They want to be personal. Make sure that you're keeping information confidential and give credit. It's your front line that are your assets that take the heavy work. Give them credit. Give it away. Do it often, and also take the heat. There are also times where you need to be firm, where you need to hold people accountable. And one of the great questions that a really great leader says when something's not going right is they'll stop and they'll say, "What's going on?" And just by asking that, you might find a lot of information. What's going on? What do you need to do? And how can I support you? And then it's about being flexible. Do you trust the people you lead? A great thing and a great way to start is, I'm going to assume the best and I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt. Are you looking for ideas? And when people bring you ideas, how do you respond to them? And are you able to see and make them work? And do you have the humility to say, hey, you know what, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Know that you have a learning curve and it is going to take time. And it's important, again, to know your roles and responsibilities, to understand that there are two kinds of skills, hard skills and soft skills, and both are equally important. You might need to learn how to build a budget, but also how to communicate. Take time to understand the workflow and understand your standard operating procedures, policies and procedures, the flow chart. And that's also really good because it'll help you pull down silos. Know that there's legislation requirements, employment standards, health and safety. You're responsible for those. WMIS, Bill 168, Bill 132, human rights, your union agreements, your RHA as well as your leadership skills. To create a learning plan. Think, what do I need to learn right away? What do I need to learn over time? And what are some ways that I can learn? Here's some resources that are available. ORC has a great library, great courses. I read every day. I have blogs that come through that are my favorite leaders. I read and connect on LinkedIn. YouTube is excellent, has lots of great information. Again, your government websites, find books, webinars. Your HR department can help you learn, as well as really get a good mentor and a coach. Your professional network, that's, again, I have a group of people that I call all the time, and then you have opportunities for conferences and conventions and webinars. I've got 2 books that I highly recommend. There's a whole bunch, but these are my favorites for starting out in leadership. You'll see this was a brand new one that's out, and I'm halfway through it, and I absolutely love it, so I encourage you to pick them up. I have already shared with you some advice from other leaders that have gone before, but really study great leaders. Don't forget to put the oxygen mask on you. Take care of yourself. I have a whole bunch of tips that I'd be happy to share. Feel free to email me. Don't forget a final thought. They may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So thank you. We're going to open it up to questions, but I just want to give you a reminder. I love success stories. Share some ideas with me so I can share them with others. And if there's something that's missing, I know there's an evaluation, I either send it through that or email me directly, because I want to make sure that I'm always giving great information to others to make sure that they're successful. And you've got my email down here. Are there any questions, Terry, in the chat room that...
There's just one. A challenge is dealing with a friend or a peer after moving into a leader supervisory role. How is it best to manage?
And so the question, again, I'll read it here. A challenge is dealing with a friend or a peer moving into a leadership supervisor role. How is it best to manage? And I'd love to hear some of the other responses from those of you out there that maybe have gone through this and have had some learning. This is one of the things that I know, and there's a lot of different opinions on this from different managers, but be who you are. Recognize that it is tough, and you can certainly, and it's going to depend on, what they've said and how they've dealt with it and your relationship. But if you have the relationship, you can certainly have a conversation with them and let them know and be open and honest. and then know that it's going to take time. Now, if it's not gone well and the relationship is in trouble, sometimes it's not okay to, go in that deep, but you might have a conversation around how can I support you? And, this is what's so important to me as a leader, finding out what's important to them and seeing how that you can work together. So, and again, your expectations around working together and your hopes around that. So that's just a couple of ideas. And again, I think the key thing is understanding that it does take time. It's also an opportunity to get a really good mentor, somebody that when things go wrong or you've made a mistake in how you've handled it, someone that you can be absolutely open and honest with to say, hey, give me some advice here, help me out. Your network is also a great place to get some ideas from. Any other questions?
No, nothing has come through. If anybody has any questions, please type them into the question box and we'll get them answered for you.
And I want to wrap up, and I'd like to say thank you all, and I really, Terry, look forward to next week to speaking with you and the rest of the teams out there and looking at building a strong team. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Lori. The information you provided was excellent and very valuable to our members. So as Lori mentioned, please come back for part 2, which is happening next Thursday, September 21st at 2 o'clock. And if you have any questions regarding this information, please feel free to contact Orca, or you can always contact Lori as well. Her contact information is there. And don't forget to download a copy of the presentation. It's in the handout section, as well as the evaluation form. If you could please complete that and get that back to us. So thank you again to all the members who were able to join us today, and have yourself a great day. Thank you.